So the triple apocalypse in Lisbon changed the course of humanity, right?
100%. Yeah. 1755, 1st of November, Christians, they celebrate the Holy Saints' Day, which actually is a holy day that was pagan. And it is one of the holy days that was adopted with the original tradition of lighting up the candles. So 1st of November, Sunday morning, everyone light up the candle in the churches because for the saints. And 9:45, an earthquake hit the city of Lisbon. We don't know the exact number, but it is between 8.5 to 9 in the scale of Richter.
Okay, so we don't know exactly because the Richter scale was actually developed from there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sciences, as we know them now, didn't really exist back then. And the science of seismology was actually invented and created because or through the after the earthquake of Lisbon.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And they assume it's kind of like around 8, 9 Richter scale because
Exactly.
of the effects and
Because of the level of destruction. I mean, it was like the level of destruction. So I don't know if you felt an earthquake. Yeah, I remember when we were little. Remember that we were like
yes, I remember.
always having the earthquakes in the Andes Mountains.
Yeah.
And so what we have to understand of the scale of Richter is that each number above the next one is an exponential growth. So it's not only like double, but it's like exponentially going up. And so what happened here? Almost all of the ceilings of the churches, roofs fell on top of the people, trapping the people inside. The people that were outside Lisbon, being one of the oldest cities in Europe, we had a center downtown of Lisbon and these really narrow streets. So things were falling like on top of people. So people were rushing to open spaces, plazas, and most of the people run down to Terreiro do Paso next to Praça do Comércio, and
Which is where the river
which
is.
is right next to the river. If you come to Lisbon, let us know because we do these amazing tours in Lisbon. And so when they were actually there, they saw that the river didn't have any water. And the first thought they had was,
It's a miracle.
100%.
Yeah.
Why? Because they thought of the story of Moses, how Moses opened the waters so that the people can be saved. And so because we don't really have sciences are forbidden by church, people were really just thinking of this thing. And what happened after 20 minutes, we have already the tsunami waves that hit Lisbon, killing the rest of the people. And a few hours later, because the candles had already
Melted
consumed,
a little bit. Yeah, I guess.
melted, and we had so much rubble around and so much destruction, the roof on top, and so fires began all over the city. And they say that Lisbon actually burned for 5 days. What destroyed the city the most was actually the fires.
Okay.
They say 85% of the city was destroyed, and we have the triple apocalypse. We have the fire, we have the tsunami, and we have the earthquake. So we have the three things that actually like came and completely destroyed the city.
Yeah, and I remember at some point I was doing a walking tour in Porto, and they were like, "Oh, when the Lisbon destruction happened, you could actually read a book from the light of like at night
At
from the
night.
light of Lisbon burning." And of course, that's
Yeah,
like
I feel
impossible,
like
but
this is the
like,
same.
but so it
Yeah.
was like a super strong earthquake, and like everything that happened, like, and what happened afterwards, because I know that the only neighborhood that survived was Alfama, right? The
Exactly.
only ancient place, if you go to Lisbon to visit it now as it is,
Yeah.
only Alfama is as it was before
It was
the
before. And so 1755, we really have to understand what was happening in the world, what was the concept of the world, what was the perception of the world view in that moment. 1755, the authority is the Pope, the Catholic Church, and the kings and the queens, right? They are the authority. And by 1755, we already have in this moment the Enlightenment period, a period where people, thinkers like Rousseau, Voltaire, they actually were writing books and saying like, hey, there has to be a science behind all of the things that are being explained by the Catholic Church. So what happened by then, it was super interesting because the Catholic Church that was the authority, was explaining to the people in Europe, you know why this happened to Lisbon? Because everyone in Lisbon is a sinner. So this was the typical thing that they would say. But what they didn't understand is that because we're already in the Enlightenment period where people are questioning the church, this explanation that the Catholic Church did actually went against them because Alfama, the Alfama of the Lisbon of 1755, is actually a part of town that at that point was considered, let's say, the red light district of Lisbon, okay, where you have like the prostitutes that were living there, the assassins, that like all of the people that were actually the true sinners. They were living in Alfama and they were the only ones that got saved. The people, everyone that on a Sunday, 9 a.m. was in church, they all like perished, right? Like we have a destruction that is of like such a big level. We have 85% of the city, and they think that is between 30 to 40% of the people that actually inhabited the city that perished. And what happened was very interesting because but when the Catholic Church said this, everyone in Europe, and why do I say everyone in Europe? Because we have to understand that Lisbon was one of the most important or the most important commercial center in Europe. Okay, by that time, everyone in Europe would come to Lisbon to see the new things that were coming from the new world. Okay, this was like the most important port through which all of the boats that were coming both from America and from Asia, they were all coming through the river Tejo into the city of Lisbon, right? And so that was completely destroyed. It was considered a global catastrophe, global from the Eurocentric perception of the world back then,
Mhm.
right? Mhm.
Yeah, super interesting. So, like, I know that you've mentioned at some point that Voltaire has written about Lisbon, like in his books, he even mentions like this
Exactly. So
event.
the Enlightenment thinkers, they were actually, even as Voltaire, writing about this illogical explanation of the church. And so Voltaire actually wrote a book called Candida, where he uses the earthquake of Lisbon to say like there has to be a science behind, like like there has to be another reason for things to happen than just, oh, they are sinners and it's a punishment from God.
Yeah, it's kind of like they wanted to understand also like what happened like on a physical way. It was kind of
Like
like, okay,
exactly.
it can't be everything just like this. Oh yeah, sinners, metaphysicals, energy. This is like no,
Mhm.
like the literally the earth was shaking so much, and then there was this like tsunami. So like, what's the
Mhm.
relationship between like the earth shaking and the waters? Like kind of
The
like
water resetting and coming over. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And so what is super interesting is that actually the earthquake of Lisbon was such a global catastrophe that it actually changed how the religion and science, how they would work, right? And so they say that for the first time there was this meeting where the science had to sit with the Catholic Church, and that they were like getting into agreements. And so
okay,
for the first
amazing.
time the church was like, okay, scientists, we're going to stop persecuting you, burning you, but with the condition that you only focus on the material plane. You're
Mhm.
not going to go into the invisible realm because that is our area. Only us, the church, we're going to explain that. And you can focus on the material plane, what you can see, hear, taste, touch, right, and feel. And so that's why I say that the sciences were born blind and deaf because they could not focus on the quantum, right? And that's why we have like the evolution of sciences. You can search like sciences as we know them are no older than 300 years old, like chemistry, biology, like the formal sciences. Of course, the scientists have existed since ages, since before the Christian era for sure. But that's like our modern sciences as we know them. And that's why only up until 1900s that the quantum sciences actually came into play, and things are like shaking, like now all sciences are like being shook by the quantum sciences, right?
Yeah, amazing. Okay, super awesome. Like anything else you want to share about the earthquake or that time?
I
Or
would
do we leave it for
share
another video?
I would add one thing that it is interesting what happened to Portugal and the Portuguese people in that moment, okay? Because Portugal had been the most the first global empire. Okay, so 1500s, Portugal managed to be like so wealthy. They monopolized the commerce between two continents, like the entire Europe and Asia. They would connect commercially through Portugal. Okay, so Portugal had so much, and little by little, they went like lost things until 1755 when they finally, it was like the last drop, that just like made them lose everything. They even lost the most important port in Europe. And so in that moment, I would make a simile to what we felt in the COVID, where they were like questioning their life. They were like, okay, questioning their value system. They're like, okay, so why are we valuing so much the material when there can be an earthquake, a tsunami, and a fire, and we can lose everything that is material? So the value system changed in
In
Portugal.
Portugal.
Aha,
Hmm.
exactly. And what happened was that they actually began valuing a different type of life, a life that is maybe more peaceful. That's why in Portugal, maybe if you have a job that can pay the basics and can pay for your basic needs and what you need, then maybe that's good enough if I can have enough free time to go next to the river, read a book or paint or do something like this. So I say that this is when the real Portuguese patience began. It's
Okay.
like they shifted completely from being like, I want to be a billionaire to being like, okay, I want to have a really good quality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And being in the present.
And being in the present
That is
moment.
what the calzada, the streets of Lisbon are
Are making
requesting
us.
for us. Yes,
Exactly.
every
Yeah.
time we're walking. Okay.
Yeah, the Portuguese sidewalk. If you come to one of our tours, like this is like literally the first thing that I say. Like, look at the feet, look at your feet, like see where you're walking, be super present. It's like super important to be present for a lot of reasons, so that you can actually receive the gift of life, but also so that you cannot trip because it can be super
Yeah.
tricky. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you in another video. Ciao.